It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Did you eat your salad? You shared your salad yesterday?
Yeah. Did you make any of them?
I have an avocado. I'll probably make it this weekend.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, I just wanted to say that one salad, I added a little bit more sweetener to it and a little more juice, the one with the mango. And I put a lot more mango in it. So jazz it up a little bit. I thought it needed something after I tried it.
That's right.
All right. Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you. We were just talking about the class that I did live from my kitchen yesterday for the very first time on bean salads with pizzazz. And I think some of you, besides Cassandra, were in there yesterday, and we had some fun with that. I certainly had some fun with that. Anyway, there will be more of that coming. But for today, you just have me in front of my computer, and we're going to be talking about soups from scratch. This time it's about bean soups and chowders. How many of you have come to the soups from scratch, the foundation with the broths and the stock? Have you been to that one yet?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so several of you have. If you have not been to that one, you might want to try it, because I like to think of that as the way to lay the flavor foundation for a really great soup. So soups from scratch, just the basics, is really about the basics. But today we're taking it a little bit further, and I just want to welcome all of you who have been with me all along here. It's always great to see you back. And I also want to welcome those of you who may be new to Get Set Up. Is there anyone who's brand new to Get Set Up today?
What do you like most about consumer site?
Anybody that's brand new? And while I'm asking you these questions, one of the things, since I hear a little background noise, that I want to do is introduce you to Phil, who's joining us as a TA. And one of Phil's responsibilities here is to just check to make sure that we don't have any of that background noise. So he may mute your microphone along the way. I've asked him to do that, and that just is so that we keep that out. But by all means, you can take yourself, turn your microphone on and share questions or input that you might have. I want you to feel comfortable doing that. You can also do that in the chat, and Phil's going to monitor that as well. So is there anyone who's brand new to coming to my classes today? Okay, so Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Oh, I recognize you. So Sarah is also with Get Set Up and does some great, she does some great crafting classes. We've been collaborating, and one of the things she's going to do is do some table settings around some themes throughout the year. So when you see some menus pop up that I might be teaching you about, you can pop over and look for Sarah's classes in case you want to set a festive table to go along with that menu. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. And right about now, you should be able to see my slide. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Excellent. We're on the right track. That's very good. And here we go. So if there are those of you who are new, and some people may be more shy, I will just say that my name's Deb, and I'm your guide here from York, Pennsylvania. My background is in training and development. So all my career, I've done that sort of thing. And now I get to do it in a fun way, talking about food. And what is really fun about it is that you all show up and share your ideas and your recipe inspirations. So I think we have a great time together in these classes, and that's my goal. We do ideally learn best from each other. So I just bring a piece of the puzzle and you bring the rest. And so to learn best, I think if you come on camera, that's terrific. That's the gold standard. If you're on camera and you have your microphone on and you're engaging, I love that. I know all of our guides love that. It keeps it exciting and entertaining. And having said that, I also know that there's times when you don't want to be on camera, so no worries about that. Thanks, Pat. Thanks for joining by camera, and thanks to those of you who are on camera. I appreciate it. We are recording the session, and Phil, if you just want to double check to make sure that the record is on, that would be appreciated. Sometimes I stop that early on. And you can
Everything is fine.
Great, thanks, Bill. So we're going to have that recording available to you if you want to request it from help@getsetup.io. And we are on live stream today. So if you've been taking advantage of the live stream, you know that this is playing in the background for some people. And I just want to give a shout out to anybody who is here from live stream, and also invite you to register and come to these classes and participate like all of these wonderful people to do. We have lively conversations. And last but not least, I think that you probably all know this by now. We have no financial relationship with any of the websites, services, or products that we might talk about as we go through these classes. So yes, if you've taken the other class, you've got these quarts, maybe, or pints or quarts of chicken stock or vegetable broth and stock in your freezer, just begging for a soup. I had somebody come today earlier and say, oh, I made chicken stock yesterday. So now we get to use it. We're going to talk about using beans in soup, and then go over a couple of nice hearty bean soup recipes. Now, granted, we're getting into spring season. Maybe bean soups aren't as appealing as they are in the middle of winter, but nevertheless, you'll have them in your pocket for later. And then we're also going to talk about what is a chowder. You know, I got to thinking about that. I instinctively know chowders, but I thought, what is a chowder? I'm going to go and check that out. So I'll share that with you. And then I do have a really great but decadent, very decadent clam chowder recipe to share with you. So, you know, I always talk about healthy eating. This is one of those where, you know, a couple times a year I fudge or I let it all hang out and go for the really good clam chowder. So I'm going to share that with you. And then a lighter seafood type of chowder, and then a vegetable type chowder. So that's what I had in mind for the agenda. What were you hoping to do today?
Learn about chowder.
Learn about chowder. That I had you at chowder, huh? Okay. Anybody else have anything in particular that you'd like to talk about today? Okay, let's get started. I have a question to ask you. What are the advantages to using beans in soup? Sometimes it's worthwhile to think about what we put into our soup and why we do it and what is good about it. So why do we put beans in soup?
Protein.
Protein and fiber.
Protein and fiber. Yep. Lots of protein, lots of
Reduces cholesterol.
Yep, because of all the fiber, it reduces cholesterol. It helps to reduce cholesterol. Yep.
Beans are cheap.
Linda, you want to try that again? Linda?
Beans are inexpensive.
Amen to that, sister. They are inexpensive,
Mhm.
especially if you buy dry beans
Yes,
yourself, right? And Linda, I think you do that, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about that. So all good reasons. And beans, you know, if you incorporate what the government suggests, which is 2 cups of beans per week in your diet, you're going to raise the quality of your diet and have a positive impact on your blood sugar and on your digestion for all sorts of reasons that we've already mentioned, and we might get into more of that as we go along. So we can use canned beans or we can use dried beans. Obviously, there's pros and cons to each one. Canned beans are simple and they're already cooked, ready to go. The downside of canned beans, what are the downsides of canned beans?
The salt intake in the
Sodium. The sodium.
Sodium.
Yep. And the other disadvantage is because of the way that they are processed, they can tend to get mushy. So those are 2 drawbacks. How about the pros of using dried beans? What are the advantages there? We've named one.
They're crunchy.
They're a little different texture. So they can be crunchy, but you can make them softer too, but they get more creamy as opposed to mushy. I just made kidney beans the other day. They were so good. What'd you say, Marjorie?
They're not processed.
They're
Not-
not processed. There's no extra sodium in there like that.
No sodium.
Exactly. Yep. They are less expensive. They are better texture. They have less sodium, and they're, sitting on our shelf, and they stay on our shelf for long periods of time, dried like that. So that's good. We've already talked about the substantial health benefits of beans, and I wanted to just put this out to you too, because sometimes we tend to stay away from beans because of their undesirable side effects. And so we can pop a couple of beanos. They do a pretty good job. But did you know that if you do eat more beans regularly like this, if you start to work up to 2 cups a week and you eat that consistently, those characteristics, those problems will start to lessen. So as your body adjusts, it will get better at dealing with that. That's a real pro for eating beans every week. Beans are also a great way to thicken soups without adding fat calories in other ways through creams and so on, because they're starchy, they make soups thick, and we can use an immersion blender to blend some of those beans in with our soup to make the soup appear like a creamy consistency and to have that mouthfeel. And we do in soups commonly use black, navy, cannellini, and kidney beans. They show up a lot in soups, but I'm going to show you, give you a tour around some other beans as well that you can use. So I'll just stop for a moment and see if you have any thoughts or comments to add to what we just talked about here, or if there's anything in the chat, Phil.
No.
Okay. But do you want to say anything about beans in general right now? Okay. So let's talk about measuring beans, because you may decide that sometimes you do want to use dried beans. Does anybody else use dried beans besides Linda? Who did I miss? Who else uses it? Sarah, you do. Karen, you do. Marjorie, Cassandra. So how did you get it in your head how to use dry beans instead of canned beans? How'd you figure that out? Or don't you measure? Do you just kind of eyeball it?
Eyeball. All the eyeball.
It's all about the eyeball.
Yeah, I don't measure.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of better when you don't have to measure, but sometimes measurements can be helpful when you're converting a recipe or you're following a recipe. So I'm giving you a few guidelines, and this will be in the email that I send out after the class. And that email is going to have links to everything we talk about, including the recipes. So make sure you get those, and make sure you check in spam in case you don't see the email. So these are some conversions. It's important and helpful to know that half a cup of dried beans is equal to 1.5 cups of cooked beans, which is equal to a 15-ounce can of beans. So that's really helpful. And 2 cups of dried beans is equal to basically a pound. And a pound is basically equal to 6 cups or 4 cans. So when you go out and you're buying your dried beans, you get a pound of beans, and it's like having 4 cans of beans. So you might pay $1.79 to $2 for a pound of beans, dried beans, but at the grocery store, you'd pay anywhere from $1 more on for a can of beans. So you're talking about at least $4 for 4 cans of beans versus maybe around $2 for a pound of beans. So as Linda said, it's definitely a cost savings. So I guess I would like to know how, one of you, just raise your hand because I know several of you are using the beans, but which one of you would like to just go through your process of how you prepare and make your beans when you go from dried? Who wants to share that with us? Anybody?
I just rinse, throw it in the pot, and no salt, just the water.
And do you soak them, or you?
No, I just wash them, and my pot, I just throw them in my pot and then just let it cook.
How long do they take?
I use the slow cooker. So this way I just throw it in there and let it cook for a couple hours.
Okay.
I,
So way. So you do it without soaking. All right.
I use the Instant Pot.
Okay. And how does that work, Linda?
Great.
Tell, how long does it take when you make, say, kidney beans? What's your process?
15, 20 minutes.
And are they pre-soaked?
No.
No. Okay. You just put them in the way they are. All right. Okay. So go ahead, Cassandra.
Okay, I open my bag and I pour beans in my hands to sort out the beans, because sometimes you have some little foreign objects in the bag with the beans.
Yes. Yes.
And then
Yes.
I put them in the pot. I rinse them, and once I rinse them real good, I leave water in the pot and have the beans, and then I soak them overnight.
Okay. Yeah. And that can be really helpful in getting rid of some of the softening the pectin, which is the outer part of the bean that keeps it, and also just soaking off any of the nasties that are in there and just getting it ready so that it takes less time to cook if you're cooking them in a more traditional way. So this is what you're talking about, this whole process of cleaning them first, putting them into a colander and rinsing them off. Lots of times nowadays, they're a lot cleaner than they used to be. But you still want to give them a rinse. And then you can do, I did a little research on this just to see. And so there are these different ways. One is to brine them. And I'll tell you what I did. I did a brining experiment with mine, and I put them in water overnight with salt. And then I cooked them in I don't have an Instant Pot right now, but I do have a pressure cooker. And my pressure cooker says that I'm supposed to cook those beans, those kidney beans, for 25 minutes. I cooked them for 25 minutes, and now I am going to be making a bean spread, a bean dip, because my beans got so soft that they wouldn't stand up. Then I backed it off and did it for 12 minutes, and they were still pretty darn soft. So I could go way back. I did the same thing with garbanzo beans, and in 4 minutes I stopped their cooking, and they were really on the border of being almost too soft. So brining really does soften things up. I ended up cooking extra on the stovetop the next day, and they didn't take nearly as long on the stove as they might have normally. So the salt does do the job to break down that pectin. Other kinds of soaks, if you're doing the traditional way, is a soak overnight, where you just put them in water and let them soak for 8 to 24 hours before you cook them. And then you have a hot soak, which is bringing them to a boil and letting them soak. And then quick soak, which is turning them on heat, bringing them to a boil, and then turning them off and just letting them soak for about an hour. This hot soak is overnight. And this hot soak seems to have the best consistent outcome for a softened bean and a consistent texture and an elimination or a reduction in the compounds that create that gas. So that's the other reason why we try to soak. It doesn't always work, but it's supposed to break some of that stuff down. And of course, when you're soaking, what you need to do is use a very deep bowl or a very deep pot. Why? What happens when you put your beans in water?
They puff up.
They swell, they get bigger,
They get really bigger, yeah.
bigger.
They grow to the top of your bowl. So yeah, you'll turn around and they're out of the water. And then another tip, does anybody use this one? Cook beans with baking soda. Yeah, tell us about that, Sarah.
Just boil them. Usually if we're going to make baked beans, not necessarily for soup, we'll boil them in baking soda. And it's supposed to get the gas out. I don't know that I've noticed a lot of difference by doing it, but it's probably worth the try. Yeah.
And the other thing is that it's supposed to cook them faster. So it's a combination of things that I've read. There seems to be quite a bit of bean lore out there. So I had to go to the Bean Council and find out some things for sure. And that's where I got the brining idea, from the Bean Council. So I wanted to get into these recipes. And the first thing I'd like to ask you, though, is what beans you do commonly use.
Black beans, lentils,
Okay.
Pinto beans, black eyed peas.
Great Northern,
What's-
pinto, navy beans, kidney beans,
What was the first one you mentioned, Karen? I didn't miss that.
Great Northern.
Oh, Great Northern. Okay. Yeah, so there's lots of beans with great characteristics. They're all a little bit different. And sometimes we don't, take advantage of all the beans that are out there and all their different textures and tastes. So we have this 15 bean soup I'm going to share with you. And these are some of the beans, the Great Northern, as you were talking about, pinto,
Yeah.
lima beans, yellow eyes. And if there's any of these that you want to know more about or want to see, I can show you. Garbanzo beans, baby limas, green split peas would be considered a bean, and kidney beans. Yes.
Yes, that's right.
And then we have cranberry beans. Here's what they look like. Aren't they pretty?
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
They are good too, cranberry beans.
Yeah. How do you use them? What do you put them in soup or other things?
I just cook the cranberry beans, cook them maybe with some turkey meat and cut up some onion in it. And I add a little fresh garlic to it,
Yeah, that's
and chicken broth.
Mm.
And that's it. Cranberry beans, I love them.
What is it about cranberry beans? What that makes them different? They must have a special flavor to you or something,
They
consistency.
kind of put me in mind of a pinto bean. To me, a pinto bean, and I love pinto beans.
Okay. So the pinto beans, I don't have a link on the pinto beans for what they look like, but they remind you of the pinto beans.
Mm-hmm.
And then these white
Oh,
kidney
Deb,
beans, huh?
Deb,
Yep.
did you say you would give us? Did you say you would give us the recipes afterwards, or should we be writing them down?
Oh, no, you bet. I'm going to give you the recipes. You never have to write down a recipe in this class.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then this is the white kidney bean, also called a cannellini. Go ahead, Marjorie.
I'm familiar with the yellow eye bean.
Okay, the yellow eye bean. Let's look at this. It is actually, look at that. Does it look like a yellow eye? How about
Wow.
that? And it's been funny as I was looking at these various beans, everybody likes to claim that they're the New England baked bean. So there must be 4 or 5 beans here that lay claim to being the baked bean. And this is one of them. Yellow-eyed beans.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I got a question from Susie.
Yes.
Which beans are most nutritious?
Well, I do a little bit of this in the bean salad class. I looked a lot of that up and posted the nutrition information. They're all really, really similar. They vary a little bit, but I think garbanzo beans are pretty high on the list overall, and the kidney beans as well, but they're all just very high in vitamin B, especially folate, the protein, fiber, potassium. They're just little nutritious powerhouses. I'm sorry, I can't get any more specific about that, but there's not one that just jumps out at me and says, pick me, pick me. Garbanzo might have been the one that if I had to pick one.
Are garbanzo chickpeas?
Yes, they are, Pat. Yep. Thanks for saying that. Yep. So, anybody ever hear of this Hearst's ham beans? This is a brand of bean soup, bean mix that's been around for a long time. And so they will do a good job of introducing you to all those different beans because they put together a packet of 15 beans for a 15 bean soup. They also include a flavor packet in there. If you want to make it really easy on yourself, you can use a flavor packet. And I actually looked up the ingredients in their flavor packet because their website has a lot of frequently asked questions about are there animal products in there? Are there things that are bad for us in that product? And they answer all those in a very favorable way. So I wouldn't have any problem with using that flavor packet. And this is an example of a bean soup that you can make with in a slow cooker, and that you do not have to soak the beans. So it's one that only takes a couple of minutes to prepare, but in the slow cooker, it takes 5.5 hours to cook, which means it smells really great. It makes about 12 servings, and you've got plenty of leftover to freeze. You are just not soaking these beans, just rinsing them thoroughly and putting them into a slow cooker it gives you the amounts of 8 cups of stock. This is where you can use your stock that you made, or you can use water. And then these vegetables, onion, garlic, and then you can add meat or a ham bone to this, which will make it very flavorful. If you want to leave that out, I have a vegetarian version. I'll show you that next. And then just cook it for 5 to 7 hours. And when the beans are tender, get rid of the ham bone and stir in the can of diced tomatoes and the flavor packet and any optional seasonings that you might like chili powder or a little lemon juice if you like that. This is where I'm tasting away and adding things to my pot as I go. And then just cook it a little bit longer, 30 minutes to let it mingle. And then you're ready to go. So this is a super easy 10-minute preparation kind of soup that makes a really thick and hearty soup. It may be so thick that you might want to add extra water to it or extra broth if you like your soup brothier. So that's one example of a set it and forget it kind of soup. And then this is the vegetarian version if you're interested in that. So if we scroll down to the recipe, doesn't that look yummy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go with the beans. We're going to soak these beans overnight in this case, in this recipe. And then when we're ready to cook them, we drain the beans and rinse them and mince the garlic and dice the onion and put all of that in the soup pot. The onion, the garlic in the soup pot with the coconut oil. So you're sauteing that. You might remember we talk about mirepoix. This is the mirepoix. Once the onions have softened, you add carrots and celery that have been diced. Saute it for another few minutes, and then add the beans to the pot along with the water that you would choose, or you could put your vegetable broth in here, again, if you're doing vegetarian vegetable broth. And then bring it to a boil and let the beans simmer for about 90 minutes in this case. So you have soaked the beans overnight, and now you're going to cook them for 90 minutes. And after that time, they should be pretty soft and broken down even a little bit. And at this point, you're going to notice that your soup is getting a little cloudy thick because the skins are breaking, and that's the nature of the soup. Then you add, just like you did in the other soup recipe, you're adding in your tomatoes and your additional spices. In this case, cumin, oregano, smoked paprika, cayenne pepper. These are all flavors used to flavor the soup instead of a ham bone. Yeah, Tony, was that a question?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Okay, I saw your hand up there. I didn't know you were waving me down or not. So then you just, you just cook it, simmer it a little bit longer after you add those spices in, just to let the flavors mingle. And if you'd like to have a little bit of an acid in your soup, you can add a splash of apple cider vinegar. And that's it. And then as we go, what the point here that is made in the last sentence is that if you store the soup in the refrigerator, the salt can absorb into the beans, and then your flavor gets a little bit more muted in the broth. So you might want to add a little more salt into your broth. But if you're salt sensitive and you're watching sodium, then be careful with that. But beans and potatoes, starchy things like that do absorb salt. So that's what will happen. So in this case, what she did was use the 15 bean varieties and got rid of the seasoning packet. But I don't think there's anything, you can double check if you're vegetarian or vegan to see whether there's any reason why you can't have that. I didn't detect that when I first read it, I don't think. So that is, that's the 15 bean soup. A good introduction to an overall bean soup that you might, whoops. There. Okay, and then I've got this recipe for a hearty black bean soup. Does anybody make black bean soup now?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah, you like your back. Do you make your black bean soup with ham and or meat or without?
No, vegetarian.
Vegetarian.
With,
Okay. Anybody use meat?
I do.
Okay. So let's take a look at this one. This one does use some bacon. Can you eliminate it? Yes, you could eliminate the bacon and just proceed. You can reduce, or you can eliminate the chicken broth and use vegetable broth. So that would make this recipe vegetarian, and the garnishes are, if you're vegan, not something you would do, but or dairy free. But everything else I think is pretty good in here. And I'm going to just give you a little bit of a viewing pleasure here to watch this soup being made. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Maybe.
I'm starting with a soup, a black bean soup that uses pantry staples to the ultimate max. My love for this stuff goes back to college days when there was a little neighborhood place across the street that served the best black bean soup. I start by getting 10 pieces of smoky bacon, and then I'll roughly chop it. So I'm just gonna throw this bacon into my big pot here. I've got it over medium-high heat. Give a nice sizzle. The pan looks dry, but as soon as the bacon starts to cook, it's gonna give up all its fat, and that's plenty of fat for the entire dish. Great, so while this is browning up, I'm gonna go ahead and start chopping some onions. I'm gonna use 2 medium onions. So I'm just chopping these into medium dice, which is about 1/4-inch pieces. And mix it around, get all that fat in there. I'm gonna also add fresh garlic, and that's gonna pack quite a punch too. I bought these fresh peeled garlic cloves. I'm gonna take 6 of these.
6.
So the next thing I'm gonna add is some low sodium chicken broth. That goes in.
Our broth is so much better.
You can also use water if you don't want to pick
stock.
up a can of chicken broth, but come on, it's so easy, and for $1.50, why not add the extra flavor, you know? I'm also gonna add canned chopped tomatoes. There goes about half. The chopped tomatoes are gonna add sweetness, but I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more with regular old ketchup, about 2 tablespoons. Perfect. And then even more flavor, some Worcestershire sauce. It's gonna add some tanginess and a little bit of saltiness. About 2 teaspoons should do the trick. A little bit goes a long way. And then I get to give it one big stir. And there's the base for the black beans, which I'm gonna add next. There are my beans. Good 4 cans to make it nice and beany. Yeah, all that liquid in there, that gummy liquid, that's what I'm gonna get rid of and wash off. They just need a quick rinse. You don't have to worry about it too much. And then I get to add them. Here we go. All right. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And it looks like it actually could use a little more liquid, fill it up with a little bit of water, and then add it till the beans are covered with liquid. That's perfect. And the last step is some salt and pepper to pick up all those great flavors. 3 good pinches and plenty of fresh ground pepper. go ahead and bring this to a boil and let it simmer for about 15 minutes. And I'm just going to finish it up with a few more special ingredients. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of chili powder. That's going to add some nice additional smokiness to the black bean soup. A little goes a long way, so a tablespoon is definitely going to be enough. I'm also going to add the juice from the whole small lime. I'm going to give it a quick rub here on the board to release all of its juices. Cut it in half through the belly. The lime's going to add a lot of freshness and kick to the soup. It's also going to pick up a lot of the flavors. Acidity picks up flavors just like salt. To that, I'm going to add one last final ingredient, cilantro. And I'm definitely giving it a Southwest feel here. Cilantro, lime, chili powder, these are all kind of Southwestern Mexican flavors. And I'm just going to go down a small bunch of cilantro. So that's about a good handful, and it goes right into the soup. So that's the last final touch to the black bean soup. This is sour cream.
Okay,
Always.
great.
I love it on black bean soup.
This is so good.
And I finished it with fresh cilantro at the end. Gives it that freshness.
Yeah.
So what did you see in that film that you had comments or questions about? My goodness, he started over again. What did you see there? Anything?
I got a question from earlier, but from Susie.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Are lentils actually beans?
Yeah, lentils are like they're in that family, Susie, and they are, it's an interesting thing. So they are, they're considered in the legume family, and they are a seed. They come in a pod, and so they're like a bean. They have same nutritional properties. So they call them beans, they call them lentils. You know, I don't know why they don't throw them together, but they don't. So they are a type of bean. That's the best I can say, but they literally, they call them seeds, but they grow in the pod like a bean does.
Excuse me, I got one question.
Yeah, Tony.
What about when you make a soup, some people put in barley?
They put in what?
Barley.
A bone. Oh yeah, that's great.
Bone or seasoning.
Yeah, if you put a ham bone into your soup, it's going to bring a lot of flavor into that soup. That's definitely good. Great thing to do with your Easter ham bone. So the black bean soup here, I was thinking of a couple of things that I saw there. He used those canned beans, but look at how he rinsed those. So he made sure that he was rinsing off some of the sodium. I do want to say that the bean liquid that you cook your own beans in is actually a good thing to save. And you can use it as another liquid in a soup that you make because it's very nutritious. And it is also thick, so you can use it for a thickener. It's called liquor. It's called the bean liquor, and it's very healthful. So you don't have to get rid of that either if you like to keep that. Do you use yours, Linda, your bean liquor? Does anybody use their bean liquor for other purposes, or do you just throw it away?
I have not ever used it, but
Okay.
I will now.
Yeah, you can give it a try instead of throwing it away, or instead of using water, just plain water and things, you can use it. Anything else that you saw on that you want to comment on? I had to laugh at him though. He said, oh, why not for $1.50 throw in a can of chicken broth? And I was thinking about how inexpensively we make our chicken stock, and $1.50 sounded like a lot of money to me. Plus not that flavorful. And what I'm going to do now is give you this Tuscan bean soup as well. This is a vegetarian version, and it's very much the same as the others that we were looking at in the method, but I just want to go over the kind of particulars here. This one uses different vegetables. So we have our mirepoix, which is the celery, carrots, and onion that we're going to saute in the olive oil for about 4 minutes until all of that gets soft. And then we add in the aromatics, the garlic, the red pepper flakes, the thyme, and the rosemary until those things get fragrant in our pan. If you came to the soups from scratch class, you know that these are considered aromatics at this point in the soup. And then we're adding our vegetable or our chicken stock. And then the cans of cannellini beans, diced tomatoes, and at the end, we're stirring in, or toward the end, we're stirring in kale, and then covering the pot and letting the kale simmer until it gets softer. Then we can use our immersion blender. We talked about that in the last class too. The immersion blender is a stick blender that you put right down into the soup, and it allows you to puree the whole soup, or you could just puree part of it. So when you put your immersion blender in this soup, you just want to puree bits of it so that those beans can thicken that soup up a little bit. And when you get that to its desired consistency, then you just go ahead and add whatever other spices, seasonings you might like to bring it to the flavor that you like. Salt, pepper, a little sugar if you want, vinegar, just adjust to your taste. And then you can serve it with some Parmesan cheese on top. So that's a potentially complete vegetarian bean soup as well. Like to try to give you options.
Will are these recipes available? Will you have them listed so we can use them?
You bet. I'm going to send all of this out in the email after class. Always in all of my classes, I give you all the recipes. So you'll get, it depends on the class. Sometimes I send a link to a document. Sometimes I just sometimes I attach a document. Sometimes I just send you a list of links. And when you click on the links, they bring you back to these websites that we're looking at. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll get that. I don't want you to have to worry about writing any of those things down.
Good.
Okay, so let's talk about chowder now. I thought this was fun. I went back to say, where in the heck did that word come from? And I found this quote, which I thought was very instructive. This was by Tobias Smollett. He was a novelist. He wrote The Life and Adventures of Sir Lancelot Greaves. And the quote was, "We frequently serve up a mess called chowder, consisting of a mixture of fresh fish, salt pork, pounded biscuit," you know, that stuff they had on the ships, "and onions, which, when well seasoned and stewed, we found to be an excellent and palatable dish." So this was some of the earliest mention of a soup called chowder. Where do you think chowder making was traced to in the United States initially?
New England.
Absolutely. Yep, the New England area for sure. So now there are many different kinds of chowders that are called chowders. The other definition of chowder that I've read often is that a chowder has chunky pieces of stuff in it. It's not as thick as a stew. It's more brothy, but it has bigger pieces of vegetables and meats in it than, say, that bean soup we just looked at. So now I'd like to just share with you my all-time favorite clam chowder. We make this once a year. We make a double batch of it. We freeze some of it, and we invite company and serve it because they love it. So it's Emerald's recipe. I certainly can't take credit for it. It is fantastic. So you'll see why I say that it's a little bit decadent, although, you know, things could be worse, but it's pretty high calorie. But again, it's a splurge. Look at all the wonderful ingredients here. We're starting with bacon. So of course that tells you where we're heading. We're going to saute the bacon and then add chopped leeks, yellow onions, and celery and carrots to our stock pot. So the pictures really show us this nicely. In this case, look, we're not chopping those things too finely. Although I have to look at that a second. Yeah. The pictures, in this case, I'm not too sure the pictures really, I would chop these as opposed to slicing them. I'm not sure those pictures really reflect the way that I might do that. I don't do quite such big pieces because this is not getting pureed. This is cooking down. So go with what we say, and that is to chop those things. and saute them together. And then we're going to add the aromatics. So I'm going to go back up here to the recipe. We're adding in fresh thyme. Thyme really makes this recipe, I think. It really brings out the great flavors in the chowder. And then we're going to stir in a little bit of flour. If you don't like yours, if you don't need that excessive thickness, I have sometimes gone without white flour in my soups because I can just do without, and I try to eliminate it, but you can add that. And then a pound of white potatoes, 4 cups of clam juice, 2 cups of heavy cream, 2 pounds of little neck clams, and 2 tablespoons of chopped parsley go in at the end. Now I'll tell you what I do with the clams. Have you ever seen those large cans of clams at Sam's Club or Costco, the big ones? I'll just use as much out of that as I want to thicken that soup. And usually the juice is enough from those cans that I rarely need to buy any extra. So you can experiment with that. I like my chowder really clammy tasting. And so the cans are very full. They make a nice, rich, and meaty chowder. But if not, you can follow the recipe as written and it will be delicious. But that's just my option. And I'll just pull it all the way down here. This is what it's looking like. Add the clam juice. And then things start to thicken up because you've got your flour in here, but this still just has the clam juice in it. Wait till the potatoes are fork tender, and then you add the cream at the end, and you just simmer it. You don't need to boil it. Then add the clams, just fold them in. They don't have to cook they don't have to cook for long periods of time. They're very tender. If you fold them in, they won't overcook. And there you go at the end. You can just serve it with a little parsley on top. It is, if you like clam chowder, you're going to love it. Has anybody had Emerald's Chowder of Love before? Okay. When you make that, I want to know what you think. And it does look actually delicious. Maybe it's just me that I've made mine with smaller pieces. So do what suits you. If you like bigger chunks of vegetables, that looks fine. We like ours a little smaller. So that's a special occasion chowder, in my opinion. Now, this is an everyday chowder, and this is an Alaskan cod chowder. And you can have this done in a very short period of time, 45 minutes to make it. And it is heart healthy. It's low calorie. And it's got a reasonable list of ingredients here. So we start with our olive oil and we saute our mirepoix, the onion, celery, and then again add in a little flour if we want. I made this without flour. I liked it just fine, but it would thicken it up. And then adding in a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, some Old Bay seasoning, and salt and pepper, and then the seafood stock. Now let's look at the instructions a little bit here. You're going to sprinkle that flour in, add the Worcestershire, add the seasonings over the vegetables, the potatoes and the other vegetables, and cook. Oh, not the potatoes, the other vegetables, the celery and carrots. And then add the fish and the stock and the milk and just bring it to a gentle boil. And then stir in the potatoes and the green beans and just simmer it until the potatoes are tender, about 12 or 15 minutes. So that lets the cod in there kind of simmer its juices out into the broth. And I have to take a step back. I apologize. I said that incorrectly. You know, even as I was saying it, I thought I was not saying it correctly. Here we're adding the fish or seafood stock. We don't add the fish until the end. So let me back up on that. You're just putting the seasonings in and stirring that over the mirepoix, the vegetables you sauteed, and then adding the stock and the milk and bringing it up to a little bit of a boil. Then putting in your potatoes and your green beans to simmer. And at the very end, you put the cod in, because all that really needs to do is set up. It only takes minutes for cod to cook. And you want it to just be flaky, 2 to 4 minutes. And then you can top it with dill and tomatoes.
What do you think of using panned wild salmon if you don't have the cod.
Salmon chowder is a thing. So yeah, I think it would be great.
Thank you.
Yep. You might even go looking, just Google salmon chowder. I think you'll get a number of recipes and you can try it, but I think it would be fine in here. Yeah.
Do you make your fish stock from scratch?
If I can get hold of the fish, and I do have, I had forgotten about it, but there's an Asian market near me that actually has a real fishmonger at the market where they have whole fish and they fillet them for you and you can take the whole thing with you, so I could get the bones. But it's getting harder. Depending upon where you live, it gets harder to get the fish bones. So the other thing that I do, though, if I want something similar or at least something with a seafood flavor, is if I use shrimp in any recipe, I keep the shrimp shells and I cook the shrimp shells and then I strain the broth out of that and I just throw that in the freezer if I need a little, a little bit something that's a seafood broth. No waste that way. Yeah.
Deb, you said you bought a big can of clams from Sam's Club. If you have some left over, do you freeze it or do you use the whole can?
Yeah, I use the whole can. I honestly do. We double the batch we double the batch for the soup. So we end up using that whole can. Could you freeze it? I have never tried, honestly, to freeze those canned clams. I guess they would freeze. I don't know because of the texture of clams, whether they're more chewy. I'm not sure. But let's see. You know what? That's why we have Google, right? Can you freeze? I'm looking. Can you freeze canned clams?
A question from Jody Lee.
Yeah.
Do you also make gumbos?
Oh, that's a good question. Not in this class, but we should just do a whole class on Creole. Who asked that question? Jody Lee? Yeah, let's, in fact, I think I know some people in this community. Is there anybody that's sitting here today that makes Cajun or Creole dishes?
Well, I certainly make a gumbo or two, but I'd love to hear yours.
Okay, well, I'll put that on my list of things to develop and maybe we will get to one of those one of these days. That's not my strong suit, but that's what I like about this. I get to research and see what I can find and talk to people. So thanks for asking about that. So going back to that question about canned clams, you can, but the freezer time shown constantly, they'll keep safe indefinitely. Doesn't say anything about the quality of them. So looks like it's fine. It looks like they will freeze fine. So there you go. And the last recipe we have here is this cauliflower chowder. I wanted to show you a recipe that didn't have any kind of seafood or meat in it. It's an example of a vegetable chowder. So again, you have thickness here and big chunks of things. And I enjoyed this chowder. One of the things that I think makes it a really good soup is that you're roasting the cauliflower. So you get this really good, deep, rich flavor of the roasted cauliflower. And let's see, here. Let's just take a look at the directions since you'll get all the ingredients. So you chop your cauliflower and garlic, mix those together, drizzle a little olive oil and salt and pepper over it, and then roast it for about 20 to 25 minutes at 400 degrees. And about halfway through, just stir it around a little bit and then pull it out and then chop and peel the garlic because you're just throwing the garlic cloves on there and letting them soften up whole. Then melt in your stock pot, melt your butter and add the onion and the carrots and the celery and soften all of that. Then stir in that already cooked garlic, the cauliflower that's already been chopped and roasted, a bay leaf and some thyme, and sprinkle a little flour again for thickness and give it all a stir till it's coated. And when the flour disappears, stir in your broth And you could be using vegetable broth here or chicken broth again. And then add milk and cheese. So what we were using here was, I think the cheese was a sharp cheddar, and that would be really delicious, but you could try other kinds of cheeses for something different. And the milk that you use can be whatever you like. I made it with, did I make it with? I think I made it with coconut milk because I wanted to see how that would taste. I made it with a non-dairy milk and it was delicious. So you have a lot of flexibility with that.
Soup is good also with almond milk.
Almond milk, yes, that would be delicious. Yep, I agree. That's one thing. It's so flexible what you can do with soup and with the liquids in soup, and you can really change up the flavors of them by what milk or what liquid you do choose. So that is the last recipe that I have for the day. And
That looks delicious.
That brings us to the end of the class. Yeah, they think they look great and they taste great. I made all of them. I love them all. And I had a few others that I wish I could have put in the lineup, but they didn't make it this time, but maybe next time. So I hope you'll come to the next classes. Lots of new ones coming out. I am putting classes together right and left. I'm doing one on Earth Day. Earth Day tomorrow night, which at 5:30 will be fun because we're going to talk about Earth Day in general, maybe give you some inspiration for something to do to celebrate Earth Day, get out in nature after all of this pandemic stuff. We need to get out and just enjoy the world around us. So I put together a special picnic menu and just some ideas in case you have grandkids or you have friends that you want to do something with to constellate around Earth Day. And I've got healthy meals on a budget tomorrow. And then these other soups, the soups from scratch. I'm doing cream soups next week, and I have a new version of great meals. I'm doing great spring meals now. So those are some things that you can look for, sign up for, and I hope to see you at. And I will send these notes out just one more time. You're getting all the recipes in this email that I send out, and you'll get this button at the very bottom. Please scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on this and give us some feedback. And you can go right from that email into this button that says view the schedule. And when you do that, you will see all of the classes and the schedule over here. You can tap into live TV. And if you do schedule, you know, one of the things we like to ask, if you would please do this, connect. Have you taken any of the exercise classes? Apparently Get Set Up wants me to take some exercise classes. Yeah, you've taken some. You like them, Juanita? Like the exercise classes? So you can invite your friends from here. And I like to say that this is a good way to bring people together that you might not get to see all the time, especially now if you're cooped up. But maybe you have a daughter, or maybe you have a friend that's in another state. You can just click and share the class with them by mail or email or Facebook, or copy the link and text it to them, and bring a gang. Bring a gang to show up at a class. That would be a lot of fun.
I've been telling my friends about it and they were very surprised. I told them you can get cooking classes out of here, exercise classes, this is everything.
They can't believe it, right? They can't believe
they're finding out.
Excellent. Well, thank you for doing that and spreading the word, and please continue to do that. That's how we stay what we are, and make sure that your community organizations know about us too and help us get connected, and then we can stay here and be together forever.
Well, I even go to classes at 10 o'clock at night on the East Coast from Australia, and it's great.
You know, if you wake up and if you have insomnia, you can always find a Get Set Up class anywhere.
Yeah.
That's wonderful that you're taking the Australian classes, so you really get a chance to meet people from all around the world.
Yeah, but I have more time later on in the evening, so.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think that happens too, even as we get into summer. You know, we want to be outside. We have to shift our times maybe for when we take classes a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. I hope that you have enjoyed it, and I'm happy to answer any final questions before we say goodbye. But
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Well, I have one question.
Edmund, what?
You do like chilies and stews?
Well, we'll put that, you know what, those really go well, I think, for the fall. So look for that closer to fall. I'm going to be moving into more spring and summer foods coming up, but I will definitely have that on the list. We did
All right.
chili, we did some of that a little bit earlier in the fall, so we'll come back around to that.
Okay.
Yep.
Enjoy
All
the
right.
class. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I did too.
You're welcome, Marjorie.
Mhm.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Tony.
Yes,
I
how
come
you
to your house
doing?
for dinner.
What
Hey,
state are you in?
Who are
I'm
you?
in Florida.
Florida?
Yes, yes.
And where are you, Deb?
I'm in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And where are you? You're in Are you in California?
No, I'm in Greenwich Village, New York City.
Oh, you're in Greenwich
All
Village.
right.
That's my home. I was born in New York. Yes.
Who was born in New
Me
York?
too. So was I.
Wow, old home week.
Yeah. All right.
Very good. I love this when you can all talk like this. It's
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you.
See you next time. Take care.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.